Did you ever know who his lawyer was, Mifsud's lawyer?
Talked to his lawyer in Europe. I don't know if
So wait, you could find the guy's lawyer, but you couldn't find him?
We contacted somebody that we knew had represented him in a part of the effort to try to locate him.
And you got the lawyer. And then now you're sitting here in front of the judiciary saying you could find the guy's lawyer, but you couldn't effectuate the service of a subpoena because you couldn't find him?
Well,
do you know
first
how
of all,
silly that sounds?
as you may or may not know, we wouldn't have the authority to serve a subpoena overseas. The lawyer didn't know where Mifsud was. He was in communication with him, but he claimed not to know where he was. And we were trying to arrange an opportunity to talk to Mifsud.
Did you take possession of 2 BlackBerry phones from Mifsud in any way?
There were phones that were provided to us by
so you could find the
Mifsud's
phones,
lawyer.
but not the guy.
Correct?
Do you see how silly this looks? Like you found the lawyer, you found the phones, but the actual dude who got ordered by Western intelligence to go start this thing you couldn't find? It's kind of laughable. It seems like more than disappointment. It seems like you weren't really trying to expose the true core of the corruption. That you were trying to go at it another way.
Yeah. As we said in the report, and as I said in my opening remarks, we pursued the facts as best we could.
Well, how about this fact?
That we have.
Okay, how about this fact, Mr. Durham? The entire Mueller team does a hard reset on their Apple phone in synchronization to wipe away evidence. Did you investigate that?
I've read that.
Well, why did you investigate it? Who gave the order on the Mueller team to wipe the phones?
Yeah, that was not something that we were asked to look at, and we didn't.
No,
look
that's
at that.
not true, Mr. Durham. That is not true, because I'm holding the document that authorizes your activity, and it specifically says the investigation of Special Counsel Robert Mueller. It's in Mr. Chairman, I seek unanimous consent to enter into the record the order that says that you're supposed to investigate these things. And so, like, whether it's the Mueller team, Mifsud, how about Azra Turk? Azra Turk, what's Azra Turk's real name? Do you know that?
I'm not going to be disclosing the names of FBI personnel that are otherwise unavailable.
But an FBI, so the FBI sends somebody to go honeypot George Papadopoulos. Who gave the order to do that?
I think that's beyond the scope of what's in the report.
It's literally the scope of what your charging order is. Who put it in motion? We get after it was put in motion, the FBI did a bunch of wrong and corrupt things. Totally understand. We're trying to deal with that. But when you are part of the cover-up, Mr. Durham, then it makes our job harder.
Yeah, well, if that's your thought, I mean, there's no way of dissuading you from that. I can tell you that it's offensive and that the people who worked on this investigation have spent their lives trying to protect the people in this country and pursue within the law what it is that we are authorized to do.
You tried 2 cases, lost both of them, and then the one guilty plea you got, Kleinsmith is back to practicing law in Washington, D.C. today.
Yeah, that's beyond my control.
Right, but the fact that you allowed that plea to occur, right, and then the punishment was insufficient, the fact that you didn't charge Andrew McCabe, you didn't convict the lying Democrats or the lying Russians, you didn't investigate Mifsud or the Mueller probe, even though, as we sit here today in black letter, that was your charge. Have you ever heard of the Washington Generals?
The Washington Generals, yes.
Yeah, and they're the team that basically gets paid to show up and lose, right?
Well, I'm sure that the players who exert blood, sweat, and tears don't view it that way, but you might.
I think they do. I think they do, because the job of the Washington Generals is to show up every night and to play the Harlem Globetrotters. And their job is to lose.
I'm sorry, I was thinking of a different thing.
Yeah, so their job is to lose. And I'm kind of wondering, and it just seems so facially obvious that it's not what's in your report that's telling, it's the omission, it's the lack of work you did. And for the people like the chairman who put trust in you, I think you let them down, I think you let the country down, and you are one of the barriers to the true accountability that we need.
Do I get to respond to that or comment on that? Yeah. Well, I don't know if you've ever investigated a crime.
I don't know that you have. You didn't investigate these, Mr. Durham.
Whether or
How about
not,
Andy McCabe? Did you charge him? Did you investigate him?
Gentlemen, time has expired. The witness can respond, and then we'll move on to our last.
I don't know, sir, whether or not you've ever had occasion to try to investigate crimes under the rules and regulations and under the Constitution that we're bound by. We can gather evidence in particularly lawful ways. can't charge people because we might think
It's not just
something,
that
we
you
can
didn't
charge
charge, you
people.
didn't investigate. You
Gentleman's
didn't
time.
investigate the Mueller team
Gentleman's
wiping their
time.
phones, and you
Gentleman's
won't tell
time.
us who gave the orders because you're protecting those people.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I begin my questioning, I want to say that the House Judiciary Committee is responsible for helping to ensure the rule of law. The chairman of this committee ignored a bipartisan congressional subpoena. The precedent sent by this chairman has damaged the ability of congressional committees to get information from witnesses and damaged the rule of law. Now, Mr. Durham, thank you for being here voluntarily today. In your report, not only did the FBI have information, as stated before, that the Australians knew that Trump Foreign Policy Advisor George Papadopoulos had suggested that the Russians were going to release anonymous information damaging Hillary Clinton. The FBI also knew and had information that the Democratic National Committee was hacked by the Russians and information was being released to the American public. The FBI also had information from various media reports that Trump had relations with different Russian businessmen, and the FBI had information that Trump said, quote, "Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing." The FBI had all that information prior to opening Operation Hurricane, correct? Crossfire Hurricane, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. If the FBI had chosen to do so, the multiple pieces of information they had would have allowed them to open a preliminary investigation. Is that right?
In our report, we say that the FBI certainly had an obligation to assess the information, perhaps make it a preliminary investigation. That's
Okay.
our view.
In fact, it would have been a dereliction of duty for the FBI to have just sat on their hands and done nothing with the information that they had. Is that right?
Yeah, the FBI should not have ignored that information.
Okay. It's also true, isn't it, that the Inspector General of the Department of Justice looked at this situation and concluded that not only did the FBI have enough information to open a preliminary investigation, the FBI had enough information to open a full investigation. That was the conclusion of the Inspector General, correct?
My recollection is that the Inspector General said it's a low bar, and he thought that it had been met. The Inspector General didn't necessarily address.
So thank you. I'd like to enter the Inspector General's report dated December 2019 into the record, Mr. Chairman.
Without objection.
Okay. Turns out the FBI was correct. The Department of Justice found that the Russians interfered in our elections in a, quote, sweeping and systematic manner. A bipartisan U.S. Senate report confirmed that the Russians interfered in the 2016 elections and that interference benefited Donald Trump. Paul Manafort, Trump's former campaign chairman, also publicly admitted to giving internal Trump campaign data to the Russians, and the U.S. Treasury Department found that this data, which it said was, quote, sensitive information on polling and campaign strategy, was then passed to Russian intelligence services. There is a phrase to describe the facts I just set forth. It's called Russian collusion. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to enter both the Treasury Department documents dated April 2021, as well as the bipartisan Senate report intelligence dated August 2020.
Without objection.
Okay. Now, Mr. Durham, I'd like to ask you the following simple yes or no questions. Trump's former campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, was convicted, correct?
I'm sorry, could you just repeat that one?
Trump's former campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, was convicted, correct?
That's correct. Not in
Trump's former
connection with
foreign
these
policy
matters.
advisor to the campaign, George Papadopoulos, was convicted, correct?
That's correct.
Trump's former deputy campaign manager, Rick Gaetz, was convicted, correct?
Not in connection with the Russian matter.
All right. Mr. Durham, you can hold yourself out as an objective Department of Justice official or as a partisan hack, and the more that you try to spin the facts and not answer my questions, you sound like the latter. So I'm just gonna ask this simply. Trump's former national security advisor, Michael Flynn, was convicted, correct?
That's correct.
Trump's longtime advisor, Roger Stone, was convicted, correct?
I'm sorry, missed the last thing you
Trump's
mentioned.
longtime advisor, Roger Stone, was convicted, correct?
Correct.
In contrast to multiple Trump associates who were convicted, You brought 2 cases of jury trial based on this investigation, and you lost both. And so I don't actually know what we're doing here, because the author of the Durham report concedes that the FBI had enough information to investigate, and thank goodness the FBI did, because multiple Trump associates who committed crimes were held accountable. And the best way to summarize what happened is thank you to the brave men and women of the FBI for doing their jobs. I yield back.
Gentleman's time's expired. He yields back. Gentleman from California, Mr. McClintock, is recognized for 5 minutes.
First of all, Ms. Durham, I apologize for the
I can't even begin to. Did you know? It's incredible. Okay, this is like watching a regurgitation of every bit of nonsense put out on Fox News over the past few years in terms of the deep state, the Durham, the Pfizer. I mean, it is just like the fact that there is real situations that need a... Do you know what? Hold on one second. Hush up. Hush. Just hush. Hush. Is my remote working? You can't shut these people up when you try. There we go, it's better. The fact that there are real serious situations across America, whether it's health, right, I'll go through the list, whether it's jobs, whether it's schools, whether it's gun safety, whether it's about the economy. These are real basic situations that instead you have representatives who are just spouting out garbage. I mean, this Durham report, I can't even be bothered to go into it, just to get a soundbite that can be chopped into a clip and pushed out on blue tick Twitter, or Fox News, OAN, Newsmax, where they're like bring in some talking head, they'll play the clip, they'll bring in the representative, and it goes round and round and round. This is just really the worst of the worst on display. You look at other countries who maybe supposedly don't have such a, how should we say, sophisticated political setup, and they'll be watching this thinking, why is this going on? First of all, when was Hillary Clinton president? Just asking. No. But why is this whole thing, every other word is about the Clintons and Hillary Clinton, they have nothing. Now, it wouldn't matter if this was just like a fringe meeting or something, a CESPAC or whatever it is when they get together, but this is a full-on, paid-for government hearing. You can't tell me that the people, and when I say the people, I mean everybody, is served by this buffoonery. For me, Cori Bush hits the nail on the head. So does Adam Schiff. So does Eric Swalwell. So does Jerry Nadler. Or Nadler, rather. It goes on and on and on. And all they have to say back is, oh, wow, it's political, they're trying to say this. This is an embarrassment. If Jim Jordan would like his legacy to be something apart from Jim Jordan in a wrestling changing room, well, he's not really going the right way about it, because I get the idea of Jim Jordan's whole legacy is to let the world know that he shoved his head right up the anal passage of former guy and then speaks all the caca and shit that he says. Why they are laying down in the road to be literally pummeled left, right and centre for a guy that really, when push comes to shove, let's face it, if former guy was facing going to jail or saying, Jim Jordan, nothing to do with me, I hardly know him, do you really think Jim Jordan and the rest of them that literally slavish everything, like a hungry dog? That's what they do. Do you really, really think, hand on heart, former guy has any level of faith, trust and belief in these clowns? No.